Episode 18, Candidate for Crime, first aired November 4th, 1973. It was great planning to have it air right before Election Day, which is always the first Tuesday in November. This episode was written by too many people. The original draft was put together by Doug Benton and Larry Cohen. Doug gets no credit, though, because he was fired last episode for participating in the Writers Guild strike. We know Larry Cohen for writing the story of Any Old Port in a Storm. Before Doug Benton was fired, he handed the draft over to a couple of his favorite freelancers, Irving Perlberg and Alvin Friedman. Irving did quite a bit of writing for the TV series Quincy M.E., and Alvin just has 5 little writing credits to his name. The Candidate for Crime story was filed away somewhere for a while and then dug out again by Dean Hargrove and Roland Kibbe. They changed the script dramatically. We already know Dean Hargrove as the producer for all of Season 2 and now returning again for Season 3 after Benton was sacked. Roland Kibbe was called upon by Hargrove to help write and produce this episode with him. Kibbe was the creator and writer of the TV series The Deputy, The Bob Cummings Show, and It Takes a Thief, as well as being the writer for most of the Bob Newhart Show. So there are a lot of cooks in the Candidate for Crime kitchen. This episode was directed by Boris Sagal, and we know him previously as the director of The Greenhouse Jungle. Alright, can we finally start talking about the episode, you ask? No, because our star of the show is going to cause a little trouble for the bigwigs first. Before filming Candidate for Crime, Peter Falk was busy filming all summer long in Philadelphia for Mikey and Nikki. That production was taking much longer than expected, as most projects do, and to avoid having to return to LA to film Columbo, Peter actually said he was quitting Columbo. Now I'm sure he saw this stunt as absolutely no threat to himself because Columbo was soaring in popularity and he knew negotiations would follow. And they did. Here come some very big numbers that I'll let you adjust for inflation on your own if you'd like. Universal agreed to pay $45,000 per episode, while NBC would pay $55,000 as long as he signed a 3-year contract including 6 episodes per season. Now these are all 1973 numbers. The cherry on this golden ice cream sundae was an extra offer from NBC of $300,000 once Peter Falk signed. That was the ransom amount in Ransom for a Dead Man. He pretended to have to think about it for a minute, but of course he agreed and signed, but with a little disclaimer attached. Peter requested to have more creative control over the scripts. He wanted to look every one of them over and make any changes he thought was necessary before they started filming. Hearing all those big dollar numbers makes you wonder how much money do these people actually make on advertising that they can pay this much to one man. Well, anyway, let's move on to the episode. Actually, I first have to mention the little teaser trailer for this one, and you know I don't like them. We've got another scream in the teaser that never happens in the episode. Just to lie to us, just like the screaming teaser for Dagger of the Mind. You people think the screaming lady lie is what makes us want to watch the show? Come on. Our episode begins with a man surrounded by reporters and policemen. I'm going to warn you now, there are a lot of extras in this episode, but we've met many of them already, so I won't have to talk too long. Now let's begin. This man is Larry Carr from The Most Dangerous Match. I still don't know when or where he was born. And this is Jay Varela, born 1937 in Los Angeles, California, and showing up in several episodes of Del Vecchio.
As United States Senator, I'd be giving him twice as hard a time, and on a national level to boot. Of course they're threatening my life. I'm threatening theirs.
Wait, Columbo is here? Did we miss the murder already while looking at the extras? No, it turns out Columbo is assigned as one of the policemen watching over this political fella. All the talk going on during this crowded scene is that there are death threats being sent to him so that he quits running for senator.
No, I will not be intimidated by these threats. I will continue the campaign.
Then we have some fun superimposed video on the TV. It moves around all over the place.
Nelson Hayward, candidate for the U.S. Senate, in a race to fill the seat of the late Harold Lynch, will have round-the-clock police protection.
This is Cleet Roberts, born 1912 in Portland, Oregon. We met him as the TV anchor in Dead Weight.
I think I just clinched your boyfriend's election.
That's a really weird way to put it.
I
I can understand now why Nelson finds you repugnant.
This girlfriend of the political guy is named Linda Johnson, played by Tisha Sterling, born 1944 in Los Angeles, California. She was in A Death of Innocence, Snatched, and The Whales of August.
You are you, and I am I. So did it ever occur to you that by taking drugs you're aiding the status quo? That great apathetic majority?
Nelson is not happily married.
Look, I didn't tell you to come here to discuss his marriage. I told you to come here to discuss his affair with you.
The burly man half of this exposition duo is named Harry Stone, played by Ken Swofford, born 1933 in DuQuoin, Illinois. He was in The Andromeda Strain, Young Joe the Forgotten Kennedy, Annie, Thelma and Louise, several episodes of Gunsmoke, Murder, She Wrote, and over 50 episodes of Fame.
I happen to be in love with him.
If you were, you wouldn't risk ruining his chances.
Check out that knight statue. Looks like a perfect murder weapon, Linda. I guess you didn't see it.
Now, if you won't get out of town, at least get out of here. Your job's with the candidate's wife, not the candidate.
Linda leaves this stuffy room and the scene changes to the parking garage that looks identical to the one in Deathland's A Hand and A Requiem for a Falling Star. The blue car pulling in is a 1973 Chrysler New Yorker parking next to a 1971 Chevy Chevelle Malibu with a 1968 Ford Country Squire in the background. The driver of the Chrysler is that politician we saw earlier, and one of his henchmen comes to tell him that his car will be watched over by an officer. This is a weird shot, don't you think? And it gets a little weirder the longer you look at it. I first noticed the pretend handicapped accessibility with a curb at the bottom of the narrow ramp, but then I saw this, which looks exactly like the parking spot dividers in the rest of the garage, and then the strange timing for the elevator door opening. I think we have a little elevator set piece built in the corner of this parking garage. He arrives to his room and the henchman says he will be guarding the door. He asks Harry how it went.
Made all 3 networks. That's the greatest stunt I ever thought of. You know, all that garbage about your life being threatened really pulls the old sympathy.
Aw, what? Lying? The man goes into the bedroom, opens his briefcase, goes into the closet to pull out a gun hanging in his coat pocket, as well as a suppressor. Connecting the two, he goes to grab a watch and closes the briefcase. Well, let's meet the sneaky political man so I don't have to call him that anymore. His name is Nelson Hayward, played by Jackie Cooper, born 1922 in Los Angeles, California. He has been acting since he was 6 or 7 years old, starring in almost every film he was in as a child, such as Skippy, The Champ, and Treasure Island. He was also one of the Little Rascals.
Jackie, what is your best suit doing in here?
Gee, Mom, I gotta dress up to see my girl. I'm in love.
And you can find grown-up Jackie Cooper in the first 4 Superman films, every episode of The People's Choice, and Mobile One. He also did some directing, including several episodes of MASH, The Rockford Files, and The White Shadow.
I want the name of this flying whatchamacallit to go with the Daily Planet like bacon and eggs. Franks and beans, death and taxes, politics and corruption.
Along with his acting and directing career, he also had a military career beginning during World War II, reaching the high rank of Naval Reserve Captain. There is only one higher-ranking military veteran that was also in show business, and that was Air Force Reserve Brigadier General James Stewart. Anyway, Harry gives Nelson a script for the speech coming up, and Nelson notices a glass with lipstick on it.
Whose lipstick is this?
Linda's. I asked her over. Guess why?
To tell her to get out of my life.
You guessed.
Nelson orders Harry to stay out of his private life, and Harry rebuttals, saying he doesn't have any private life and that he has worked too hard to get Nelson where he is now, and he doesn't want Hayward blowing it because of the political liability named Linda Johnson.
Harry, I need her.
You don't need anybody but me. You can get rid of anybody but me because I know where the bodies are buried, Nels. I buried them for you. Now, that's why I'm calling this shot. You're going to be a happily married senator. Linda's out, period.
Nelson goes over to the phone, saying he's going to call Linda.
Linda? Honey, I've got to see you. No, not here at your place. Bye.
Harry's like, what, you're going to have a police escort you to Linda's house? And Nelson acts as though Linda would probably overdose herself on sleeping pills if he can't go see her in person to end their love affair.
Now let me break it to her, gently.
He must have been listening to his Brenda Lee 8-tracks on the way here.
Break it to
Harry wants to know what he's going to do about the cop right outside the door, so Nelson heads over to show him.
Oh, Sergeant.
Yes, sir.
What did he catch him doing with his tie? Hey, is that passive Sergeant Grover who thinks all shoes have metal trees in them from the greenhouse jungle?
Shoes with metal trees in them, Sergeant, that's all. That's what's making the buzzing.
Well, let's open them.
Why, it sure is. Though his name is Sergeant Vernon here, he's played by Robert Carnes, born 1917 in Watsonville, California.
But I smoke cigars. I was wondering if maybe you could go down to the cigar counter and pick me up a box of Panatellas.
Sergeant Grover Vernon says no problem, except he really shouldn't leave his room unguarded. Hayward says, well, he and Harry can hold him off for a few minutes.
Harry, give me a jacket.
What?
Harry, this is very important to me.
The plan Hayward has is to switch clothes so that this much bulkier man will look exactly like Hayward because he's wearing his hat and coat. You'd think them changing outfits will fool no one because they physically look nothing alike. But in the words of the great Dr. Fleming,
it looks fine.
Won't fool anybody.
But don't be negative. People see what they expect to see. It's the principle of association. You're dressed like Carol, you're traveling with me, that means you are my wife.
Wow, who's who here? This isn't gonna work.
Drive right out of here. Drop the car off at the beach house and call yourself a cab.
Oh, none of the guards are even looking. Sergeant Rojas is suddenly taking his job seriously of guarding Hayward's car and is now overcompensating for how easily he let someone get in and drive off with it. And the three guards jump into their 1973 Dodge Coronet, chasing after Harry Hayward. Nelson peeks around the pillar, seeing that they are gone, and gets into another car. Harry arrives at the beach house, and a gloved hand turns on the lights. And Nelson shoots him 3 times. The gun Hayward uses is a Colt Detective Special, which we will see again in a couple future episodes. And the sound of a suppressed gun that Hollywood has taught us is a loud bang of a lie, just so you know. It's an even bigger lie when talking about a revolver with a suppressor on it. Now, I know some of you are getting ready to type in the comments, I don't care about guns and I don't want to learn anything about them, you gunslinging American. Well, fine. Cover your ears for about a minute while the rest of us continue with the video. The reason is because revolvers have a gap between the barrel and the cylinder, which allows the high-pressure burning gases to escape, resulting in noise. This makes it extra difficult to suppress a revolver and basically pointless. It just looks good for the TV, I guess, until you know better. Then it's just ridiculous. Pistols, on the other hand, are a different story because they do not have a gap. I will just quickly say, even a suppressed pistol does not sound like this. Or any other pew sound that Hollywood keeps teaching us. They still literally sound like a gun. But just a little, suppressed. My final word on the suppressed revolver is that there is at least one revolver in existence that could be somewhat effectively suppressed, and that is the Russian M1895 Nagant. You can do a little research on your own as to why, if you're interested, because I can just feel people having a fit during this gun discussion portion of our crime drama deep dive. So, Hayward menacingly walks over to dead Harry and kneels down next to him. He takes off his watch and replaces it with the watch he grabbed from the drawer earlier. Looks like we have a Lucerne brand watch, and setting the time to when Harry was supposed to have been killed. He puts it on his wrist and slams it against the concrete. When we're shown the terribly broken watch face, we notice Nelson hit it on the concrete so hard that he knocked the Lucerne brand name right off. Hayward gets up and looks down at Harry, nodding with satisfaction at his incredible job well done. Now we see him pulling up to a house in a 1973 Chevy Impala. He walks around to the back of the house and looks around, finding a friendly man squatting in the bushes. And they wave at each other like this is a fairly normal sight. Then we see a lady lounging in the living room with a drink, listening to the same music that played at Miss Babcock's house in the most crucial game.
Hi, darling.
Miss Babcock?
Juanita? Juanita?
She gets up to turn off the music and, well, doesn't this room look awfully similar to Nora Chandler's living room? We have similar couches with a fireplace and the lanai. Actually, those couches also look like the ones in the Goodland residence from the Greenhouse Jungle. Anyway, since Juanita is busy doing Juanita things, this lady has to go pour her own drink. In lurks Hayward. He turns off the lamp, and her reaction is just... She walks back into the living room, and goodness, somebody get this woman a shawl. Hayward sneaks up behind her with his hands out like he's going to strangle her from behind, and...
Surprise! Happy birthday!
And everyone is laughing and talking, and the lady kisses some guy on the lips, and Hayward's like, yeah, that's fine. Now Hayward is sharing with everyone the little trick he and Harry performed earlier.
Yes, I'm wearing my hat and my jacket, zipping out of the garage in my car.
There's a switch. Imagine a husband going through all that just to be with his wife.
That's a switch.
Yep, that's a switch, all right. Why is it a switch again? Well, this lady is played by Lucille Meredith, born 1916 in Elyria, Ohio. Super fun fact, she is the wife of Roland Kibbe, one of the many people responsible for writing this episode and an executive producer. We briefly met her in the Greenhouse Jungle as the voice on the radio.
Listen.
Driving yellow sports car, chrome spoke wheels, license ZZ0324.
She was in the films Airport, 1975, They Live, and several episodes of Matlock. That's a Switch Man is played by Don Diamond, born 1921 in Brooklyn, New York City, New York. He was in most of the Zorro and F Troop episodes and every episode of The Adventures of Kit Carson. The lady behind Hayward is Diane Travis. We know her already from Etude in Black, Requiem for a Falling Star, and Lovely But Lethal. Hayward takes the drink from his wife and sets it down, trying to get her a plate of food. Her name is Vicky Hayward, played by Joanne Linville, born 1928 in Bakersfield, California. She was in a lot of different TV shows, but mostly just one-time appearances. Probably one of her more notable roles was the Star Trek episode, The Enterprise Incident, where she played the first female Romulan commander.
Mr. Spock, the doctor has now confirmed your testimony as to the mental state of your captain. He was and is unfit to continue in command of the Enterprise.
Hayward looks at the clock, seeing it is going on 9:20, the time he set Harry's watch for, and he excuses himself for a moment, closing the door behind him. Hey, now wait a minute. I know where we are. This is Jerry Park's office from Requiem for a Falling Star. Look, they even kept those same wild curtains, and the walls look the same. So then maybe this is Nora Chandler's living room. Well, Hayward calls the police department and takes out a handkerchief because we learned from the Greenhouse Jungle how well it disguises your voice.
You're worried about Nelson Hayward. You'll find what's left of him in the garage of his beach house.
See, he didn't even have to try to disguise his voice. He just talked normal because he knows that handkerchief is doing its job. Hayward surprises the group with some brandy from 1893 that he says he was saving for when he was elected to the Senate.
But I'm afraid not even that could bring me as much pleasure as I'm having this evening.
Oh, to Victoria.
To Victoria.
Happy birthday, honey.
Gee, what a guy. Now let's go to the dentist with Columbo. The dentist man is talking to Columbo about Italians and asking him questions about if he knows any mafia.
You're Italian, Lieutenant. I'm Italian. Cavelli is Italian. You're a cop. I'm a dentist. Cavelli's a tenant. None of us is mafia.
Well, I haven't had this particular mafia topic come up, but every single time we go to the dentist, they ask questions while working in our mouth. If you are a dentist, it's okay if there is silence when you have picks in our mouth. The song playing on the radio is La Donna Immobile from Italian composer Giuseppe Verdi's 1851 opera Rigoletto. So when the dentist said,
Cavelli is Italian. You're a cop. I'm a dentist. Cavelli's a tenant.
he's referring to the tenor opera singer on the radio.
Pope is Italian, ain't he? Mafiosa. Hey, gagging. Little bit.
It's really difficult to catch what the dentist says to Columbo when he responds with little bit, but the dentist asks him, "Did I gag you?"
Hey, gagging. Little bit.
The dentist takes down the x-rays of Columbo's teeth and says, "Uh-oh."
What? It's too bad. What do you mean too bad? When you say too bad, do you mean too bad like too bad it's a rainy day or too bad that there are two to the bed?
The dentist finally explains his wisdom tooth needs to come out and he needs to put a temporary on his molar. Then the silliest thing comes on the radio.
We interrupt operatic interludes for a special news bulletin. We have just received an unconfirmed report that Nelson Hayward has just been shot and killed in a garage at the Oceanfront Beach home.
Has there ever been reports on the radio or television of unconfirmed assassinations? Don't they wait until it's confirmed?
Nelson Hayward. Yeah, try to pin it on the mafia.
The dentist is named Dr. Perenchio, played by Mario Gallo, born 1923 in Brooklyn, New York City, New York. He was in Too Late Blues, A Woman Under the Influence, Capone, Raging Bull, and Revenge of the Ninja.
You keep sniffing around.
Sure, Mr.
I'll be in touch.
Sure.
So Columbo arrives at the beach house, full of cops and a whole bunch of neighborhood crime scene loiterers.
Look at them. Vultures.
Columbo asks another cop for a match.
Here you are, Lieutenant.
I can identify one of these vulturous onlookers. This man is Nico Stevens, born 1926 in Greece. Just about every role he has ever been in was uncredited. If you enjoy scanning the backgrounds like I do, you'll find him in The Godfather Part 2, The Karate Kid, and Beverly Hills Cop. Columbo stops to have a look at the streetlight that's been busted. Do you remember those streetlights?
Something I can do for you, Lieutenant?
No, I bet the kids did that. I remember that's what we used to do. Throw rocks, break the streetlight.
Sounds like Columbo is quite the little rascal. This police officer is played by Davis Roberts, born 1917 in Mobile, Alabama. He was in The Chase, To Sleep with Anger, and The Gifted. This detective lists all the items in Hayward's camel hair coat pocket and Stone's pants.
His wallet, pen, keys, pack of gum, and a handkerchief. But that's understandable, because what were in the pants belonged to the guy, and what were in the coat were Hayward's. That's all we found.
He's played by Angelo Grisanti, born 1938 in New Jersey City, New Jersey. He must have been friends with John Cassavetes because he doesn't have very many acting credits, but he is in 2 of Cassavetes' movies, A Woman Under the Influence and Opening Night, as well as appearing in the film Capone with Cassavetes.
Lieutenant Columbo, stay here, I want to talk to you.
Well, look who it is. Regis Cordic must have been done with his wine-tasting vacation after Adrian got arrested and went back to work as deputy commissioner.
What was he talking about? Who? That detective that was just here.
I don't know. I wasn't listening.
At least he's honest. I wonder what he was thinking about. The preoccupied policeman is played by Jay Saunders, born 1941 in Birmingham, Alabama. He was in Someone's Watching Me, The Night the City Screamed, and Beetlejuice.
Excuse me, be right back.
Columbo goes back over to the detective that was talking about items in Hayward's coat and pants.
I never mentioned Hayward's pants. The wallet and the key were in Stone's pants. Who's Stone? Stone is the victim.
It's not Hayward? What a relief. Holy Christmas.
Kind of makes you feel bad for Harry Stone, how happy Columbo is that he was the one that got murdered. But we learn that Columbo's wife really likes Hayward.
Hey, I gotta call my wife. I gotta get out of here. You can't leave here without a temporary in that mood. I already called my wife to break the news. She loves Hayward. I didn't want her to hear it on TV.
So maybe he's more happy that his wife isn't going to be sad. But this is kind of human nature, isn't it? Like when a celebrity dies, it can really get to people. But hearing that the guy that mows his grass at 6 a.m, a few miles down the road, died, and we're like, oh man. And did you hear the price of milk went up again?
Have we been able to establish an exact time of the death?
Yeah, that looks like 9:20 p.m. The broken watch crystal on the wrist of the deceased would fix the time.
Coroner confirmed that?
No, he hasn't confirmed it, but he feels that's about right.
The detective that believes everything he sees is played by Lou Brown, and we met him already during Short Fuse. You remember him as the guy who likes to wave around adulterous photos. Columbo pulls a watch out of his pocket, and with it flies a pencil to the ground, but he doesn't notice that. No wonder he keeps losing the pencil Mrs. Columbo gives him every morning.
Gee, you don't have a pencil, do you? Thanks. You know, my wife, she gives me one every morning, and I just can't seem to hold on to it. Excuse me, I'll be right back.
Columbo heads over to the hood of the car to feel for any residual heat. If it were morning, he would be watching out for residual dew. This man looks directly at us and then remembers he's supposed to be pretending he's one of the coroner assistants. And there's that big old TV camera that we saw in Blueprint for Murder. It seems to be a Philips and Norelco PCP-90U. The backpack is a battery and a radio transmitter. Pretty cool. The camera and backpack together weighed a little over 50 pounds. Columbo takes a closer look at the broken watch and then heads back over to the commissioner where Sergeant Grover Vernon is trying to defend himself.
When he saw Stone drive off in Hayward's car here, there was no security around, so he took advantage of the situation and he followed him here. That had to be it, sir, because that was the first time that Hayward was out of our sight. The first and only time and winds up dead.
Columbo learns the light was off when the police arrived, and he goes to find the light switch, where we get to zoom in on it and make sure we understand it is the light switch. Columbo stops the coroner from taking Stone's body away because he wants to have a look at his outfit, so he climbs right in there with him.
Shirt, soap, shoes. Okay.
Commissioner Regis says he's going to concentrate on Hayward's security, and he is assigning Columbo to Stone's murder investigation.
It'll be your job to locate this lunatic or whoever he is.
Yes.
Is that my car?
See this man? This was one of the men waiting in line in Blueprint for Murder, and remember I couldn't identify him? Well, guess what? He's back again, and I still don't know who he is. Sergeant Grover Vernon hustles over to Columbo, saying they finally found Hayward at his home.
Took him a long time to locate him at home.
We called earlier, but the maid kept insisting he wasn't there.
Good old Juanita, known for her phone pranks.
But I just now called, I got a hold of his wife. It's some kind of party.
Columbo figures he better get over there to announce Harry Stone's murder. Now we're at the party, and Juanita tells Mrs. Hayward that there is someone at the door.
Yes. Can I help you?
Lieutenant Columbo, ma'am, police. I'd like to speak to Mr. Hayward.
She says they are having a private party right now, and he can go around back and get a piece of cake, and the maid will fix him a cup of coffee if he wants.
Don't be so serious. Go have a piece of cake. Really, it's delicious.
She keeps trying to shut the door on him, but he finally gets in and says it can't wait. She brings Columbo over to Nelson, and Columbo asks to speak to him privately.
I'm from Homicide. Mr. Stone, your campaign manager. He's dead.
Harry Stone is dead.
And the piano music immediately stops, and everyone is now super alert and listening. There is just no way that girl on the piano heard this. Columbo explains to Hayward that Harry was shot in his beach house in the garage. Nelson sadly goes over to the coat he switched with Harry and touches it, as Mrs. Hayward asks people to leave under the circumstances.
I pull a sophomoric prank, and poor Harry is...
You gotta watch those sophomoric pranks, I tell ya. Then Hayward whips out his political acting skills.
He wasn't just a campaign manager. He was a very close personal friend.
Columbo wants to ask him a few questions for the purpose of his report.
Oh, leave me alone. Please, leave me alone.
Columbo instead goes over to Mrs. Hayward and asks Don Diamond for a pencil. Columbo would like to know when the party started.
Well, Nels told us to all be there at 8:30 out and back, so we could come in with him when he came home. The surprise bitch, you know.
Yes. Ma'am,
Juanita, can you please go get a shawl for Mrs. Hayward? This is getting a little personal. We're having a similar problem to Roger Stanford's little pants he had on in Short Fuse.
You know, whoever made this threat on your husband's life, he's going to know that he didn't make good on that threat, so we're going to have a man posted out here tonight.
As Columbo leaves, he returns the pen.
Sir, your pen.
Scene changes to Mrs. Hayward continuing to soak herself in alcohol, and Nelson walks in.
Oh, don't tell me. A little thing like Harry's getting murdered's enough to make you sleep at home tonight.
Wow, he stays the night over at what's-her-name's place? Well, that's not very subtle.
Police guard outside. Can't step out tonight, can you?
Vicky, let's don't go at each other again. Not tonight.
She gets up to add a little more ice to her drink. Nelson says let's go to bed.
Is that invitation social or just a professional courtesy?
I wish you wouldn't drink so much.
It's what I do best. Besides, it's something that you don't need a steady partner.
Poor woman. She brings up that display of emotion he performed when he found out Harry was killed.
I was shocked.
That's what frightens me. You were so convincing.
A very close personal friend.
She says he knows how much he despised Harry, and he admits it's the political game he's been playing for so many years that after a while you just start reacting the way people expect you to, but not as you really feel.
I mean, that bullet was meant for me.
I'm sorry, of course. It's just that sometimes I feel like you're playing that game with me.
Then she brings up filing for divorce. This really gets Hayward up on his toes.
I want you to believe I'm sorry for the things that have come between us. There is no other woman in my life, but yes, I do want to be senator. But never did I ever want to lose you. I wish you could believe me.
She knows he's lying, but she wants so badly to believe him. Just like Mrs. Fleming in Prescription Murder. Then he tries to lighten the mood by inviting her to come campaign with him during his 3-day whistle-stop tour coming up.
I can't.
Yes.
I hate all those crowds.
No, you don't, and they love you.
And then I have to stay alone all the time in the hotel.
Take that appointment secretary that Harry got you. What's her name?
Linda?
Yes, bring her along.
Oh, you evil, filthy, dirty, lying politician. Scene changes again, and we get a good look at Hayward's campaign poster. His own man. Must be Hayward's clever way of saying he's a very individual person, but I have a hard time believing it, given his chosen occupation. Columbo is sitting in the corner reading the newspaper. The headline they want us to see is Hayward far ahead, and that the polls hint he may gain sympathy votes as a result of Aids murder. The Aids is referring to Harry. And Hayward is about to enter the room, but before he does, I see Frida Renti in purple. We know her from Dagger of the Mind twice and Requiem for a Falling Star. Is she wearing the same purple outfit from Requiem? Well, here comes Hayward and the missus, and the mistress. Everyone is so happy and excited about his sympathy votes. Hayward tells little Linda to get an itinerary ready for him as he kisses his wife goodbye. This campaign manager is played by Bill Andes, born 1938 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He just has a few acting credits, the best one being this. Columbo shakes Hayward's hand, saying he saw the latest polls and he's doing terrific.
Thank you very much. You are voting in this one, aren't you?
Oh, I vote. Every election I vote. In our house, you gotta vote. Very sacred thing. We sit around the kitchen table, we discuss, and we vote.
Well, now that would be interesting, to sit in on the discussion at Columbo's table. Hayward says, well, you must have made up your mind by now.
Well, you don't have to worry about my wife, sir. She's crazy about you.
And you?
Well, I'm still a little bit on the fence, if you know what I mean.
Columbo says he had something to see Hayward about, but it can wait, and Hayward goes into his office and closes the door. Then the scene switches to an uncomfortably close shot of a very dry kiss.
They're gonna wonder what's going on in here.
I have a very busy itinerary.
I worry about you.
Oh, I'm well protected.
Columbo is outside the door, pacing and humming This Old Man. The cleaner's fella brings in a new camel hair coat for Hayward. Look at his blue velvety suit and big bow tie. Dale Kingston would definitely approve.
I'm supposed to deliver to him in person.
He's in conference. He may be a while.
Hayward's secretary is played by Katie Segal, born 1954 in Hollywood, Los Angeles, California. This role is the very beginning of her acting career, which will become very full and successful. Before she started acting, she was mostly a singer. She is the daughter of Boris Segal, the director of this episode. And the role that most of us probably know her for is Peggy Bundy in the show Married with Children. Later on, in the 21st century, she starred in the shows 8 Simple Rules, Sons of Anarchy, Superior Donuts, and has been a voice actor for the animated series Futurama since 1999.
He'll say, why do we need a VCR? Because you want to watch Phil and tape Oprah? Huh. Man, God love them. They're just children with paychecks.
Then out of the office comes what's-her-name, Linda. Columbo watches her walk away, kind of suspicious of her. His cigar is unrolling. Hayward comes out after doing some jumping jacks and invites Columbo into his office. He asks Columbo what the news is on the murder, and Columbo says they really don't officially have anything, but he personally maybe has something, but it's completely unofficial. Ah yes, it was the 70s when the mushroom decor was still popular.
Would you get to the point, Lieutenant?
Columbo gets up and asks if he can write on the back of one of his posters.
Anything you want. Lieutenant, please, just get to the point.
Then he asks to borrow a marker.
Don't misunderstand. You're a very nice man. I like you very much, but I would hate to have to depend upon you if I was in a hurry for something.
Geez, you know that's what my wife says.
I'm sure she does. Get to the point, Lieutenant.
Columbo draws the street and driveway for the beach house on the back of the poster, but then later, the poster will be switched for a different one that seems to be magnetic, and the drawing changes slightly between shots. He comments on the streetlight being broken, and he doesn't understand how the killer had enough light to shoot Harry.
Well, he could have used his headlights.
Well, you see, this street here is very narrow.
Then he searches his pockets for what he says are models he picked up over at Motor Vehicles. He places the car Harry was driving and then later the killer's car on the map.
But the problem is he's blocking traffic. I mean, right in the middle of a shooting, a citizen comes down here. What is he going to say? I'm in the middle of the shooting, you know?
Columbo just doesn't understand how the killer could see anything because his headlights would be shining right into the trunk of the other car. And flashlights can't exist in this scenario because reasons.
So that the spot where Mr. Stone was shot would still be in the dark.
Hayward is like, you mean to tell me there's no other angle in which the second car could use its headlights to illuminate the spot where Harry Stone was killed?
There was one other possibility.
You bet your life there was one. If he pulled in like this, the left headlight would have a clear path to illuminate the spot where Harry Stone was killed.
But then the shots couldn't come from the right-hand half of the garage. The killer was in this area here, and the shots came in this direction.
And more than one person can't exist outside of the driver in this scenario because reasons. The thinking statue is thinking just as hard as Hayward. This is a nice little version of the original bronze statue called The Thinker, made in 1904 by Auguste Rodin.
Very interesting.
Columbo suggests that maybe this was not a case of mistaken identity.
Maybe the murderer actually wanted to kill
What are you
Mr. Stone.
talking about? And a man wearing my jacket and my hat, driving my car, pulls into my garage and he's shot down dead. And you say that's not a case of mistaken identity. I don't believe that.
I thought you'd be relieved.
I love it when Columbo makes the killer look really foolish in his gentle way. Columbo says if it were him, he'd feel relieved, and then shakes Hayward's hand, saying goodbye. Before he opens the door, he mentions how Miss Johnson was supposed to come in here to pick up an itinerary.
So she came in and now she walked out without it. See, here it is, sir. You see, it's right here on your desk with her name on it.
Well, we were making a number of additions to the itinerary. I suppose she forgot it.
Columbo almost leaves again, but remembers something.
It's just one other thing that bothers me.
Would you mind closing the door, Lieutenant?
Columbo states that it is around 35 miles from the hotel to the beach house, and it took his car an hour and 50 minutes for the engine to cool.
Mr. Stone died, according to his watch, at 9:20. I arrived at the scene of crime 10 o'clock. When I put my hand on the engine of your car, it was cold. All the heat was gone in only 43 minutes.
And your conclusion?
I just thought it was strange.
Columbo again pretends to leave when...
I forgot to mention, but I've asked to be assigned to your security detail. I just wanted you to know about it.
Hayward is like, "Oh, that's great. It'll be a comfort to know you're around." And then he tries to close the door, but...
Can I ask you a personal question? What'd you pay for the jacket? This one here just arrived.
$200, I think.
He says the coat was tailor-made for him by his tailor Chadwick in Beverly Hills.
Actually, I had second thoughts about this jacket. It's identical to the one that Harry was wearing when... Well, Lieutenant, are you considering a change of wardrobe?
Every once in a while I think about getting a new coat, but there's still a lot of wear in this fella.
Looks very functional.
Hayward is like, "Please, if there is nothing else," and tries to shut the door, but Columbo is really trying to get under Hayward's skin.
I got a special affair coming up Saturday night, and I'm in a market for a coat.
I see. Goodbye.
And he finally gets that door shut. Now we are at Chadwick's. Look at this cherub or whatever holding this piece of fabric. So odd.
May we assist you, sir?
Yeah, looking for a jacket.
Columbo notices there aren't any jackets here at all, and Chadwick explains that their clothes are all custom made.
Yeah, I understand, but I thought you would have a model, at least something that you could look at.
Yeah, I think Columbo's absolutely right here. How do you go to a fancy place like this to get something new when you don't even know what to ask for?
What did you have in mind?
Sport jacket.
Any particular material?
Something soft.
Cashmere.
It could be.
Camel hair, that's nice. Any particular color?
Brown.
They bounce shades of brown around and eventually end up with the exact material Hayward's coat was made from.
Yeah, that's it.
Columbo says he'd like a jacket made from it because he wants to look good for a special event coming up.
Yeah, my wife, she's a Bolton League. They're having this dinner dance. It's an annual thing, you know, $17.50 a couple. And I want to look good.
You might chuckle at that $17.50 a couple, but having a look at inflation, that's worth $124. That's pretty high priced, I think, so it must be fancy. But Chadwick the tailor seems very unimpressed. Although I suppose maybe he's more unimpressed with the subject matter of it being a bowling league, which maybe he considers less than.
I want to look good.
I think bowling's awesome, by the way. Well, anyway, you guys recognize the tailor, don't you? He's almost the same character as in the previous episode, Any Old Port in a Storm. He's played by Vito Scotti. The tailor's apprentice is named Mario, and he is played by George Conrad. We don't get to know when or where he is from. He was in a few episodes of The Rebel and The Lawless Years. He is very prepared, with his pincushion armlet and pen and notepad and tape measure. If you watch just him during the scene, you'll see that he is very serious about his job and yet seems so kind without ever saying a word.
You'll have that ready by Saturday.
I'm afraid that is one of the things we cannot do. Our customers are required to allow us at least 10 days following first fitting. Excuse me, sir.
Well, he dropped Columbo like he was nothing, didn't he? He didn't even attempt to try to keep him as a customer, or at the very least remain polite. It's not like Columbo says he can't afford to pay for the coat. I guess he could have stuck his nose up at that. And it's also not like there's a line of customers he could go attend to instead. He just walks away to the middle of the big empty room to straighten his cuffs and vest. But one of the truly amazing things about the character Columbo that we have seen and will continue to see is that no matter how dismissive and rude someone is to him, he brushes it off and is totally unfazed by their self-absorbed adolescent behavior. It is one of the many lessons we can learn from him. The only time I can think of right now where he really addresses someone's rudeness was in Double Shock with Mrs. Peck's outrageous shouting scenes every time Columbo made a mistake.
But I have feelings too, Mrs. Peck. I've never been rude to you, Mrs. Peck. If you keep on treating me like I'm an enemy just because I'm here trying to find who killed the man that you worked for 33 years, well then I think you're a very unfair person.
Columbo reveals that a friend of his referred him here.
Mr. Nelson Hayward, he gave me your name, so I thought that maybe you could give me a rush job like you gave him, because he told me he had one delivered just like that today.
You did see Mr. Nelson Hayward.
Chadwick goes over to his little invoice box and finds the record of fitting for Hayward.
On the 16th.
Oh, that long, huh? May I see that?
Yes.
Wow, that's a problem, isn't it? Fair is Saturday night.
Perhaps, may I suggest department stores?
Now we are at a little political event with a sheet cake reading, "Good luck, senior citizens." Linda Johnson, sporting multiple scarlet letters, is the cake server today. Columbo finds her to ask some questions.
I'm from the police, Lieutenant Columbo. I'm investigating Mr. Stone's murder.
I see George Holmes is roaming the backgrounds again. He figures he ought to get a piece of that lucky senior citizen cake. He can previously be found in Death Lends a Hand, A Stitch in Crime, The Most Dangerous Match, and Any Old Port in a Storm. Columbo asks if he can have a word with her.
I don't know anything about the case. Excuse me.
She is weird and rudely walks away, but Columbo doesn't care. Linda has no reason to be so dismissive of him.
Could you tell me about the arrangements you made for Miss Hayward's surprise party the night of the murder?
I didn't make the arrangements.
Didn't? That's funny.
Linda suggests he go ask Mr. Hayward's secretary, and Columbo says he did ask her and she didn't know anything about it. He asks if Mr. Hayward or Mr. Stone could have made the arrangements.
Well, what difference does it make? I don't know, Lieutenant.
Columbo says if he could just find out who made the party arrangements, then he wouldn't be so troubled by this other thing.
What thing?
The fact that Mr. Stone never knew anything about a party.
How do you know that, Lieutenant?
From the start of the campaign till now, he kept a detailed record of Mr. Hayward's schedule.
Columbo wonders who hired her, and she says Mr. Hayward did.
I like him, Lieutenant. I like him for what he represents. He's a man of great courage and integrity.
Well, I'm sure that's what attracted you to him as a candidate.
Columbo looking for reactions to certain words again. Now we are riding in the backseat of Columbo's car. Did you ever wonder what this little wire fence thing was for on his dash? It's literally made for helping contain things on the dash, like maps and what have you. We get to see exactly where Columbo is turning onto Moore Park Way. And here's the intersection today. We'll turn left with Columbo, and soon we will also see exactly where he parks his car.
You know where Ridgeway Drive is?
May I see your driver's license, please?
Yeah. I'm on a force, LAPD.
Columbo hands him his badge and identification.
This isn't a department car, is it?
No, this is mine.
This policeman asks for Columbo's license, and he starts rummaging in his glove box, taking out one of his door handles. Looks like driver's licenses weren't laminated yet. When did that start? This patrolman is played by Sandy Kenyon, born 1922 in the Bronx, New York City, New York. He was in the 1959 Al Capone movie, Breezy, and The Scottish Tale.
Would you try your lights and your turn signal, please, and open the hood for me?
And now here is where we get to see the exact spot where the scene takes place because of the address on this apartment building. This big tree is gone, and the building has been very remodeled, but all the main things are basically the same, like the balcony with the little window under it, and this light fixture over here, and the stairs.
I'm looking for Ridgeway Drive.
Ridgewood, 3 blocks. Turn left and go about 1.5 miles. It's on your right-hand side. You can't miss it.
Well, now, if you give him directions to Ridgewood, he'll never get to Ridgeway. This patrolman is played by Jude Farsi, born on my birthday in 1940, but I don't know where he was born. We'll get to see him again in the future.
Lieutenant, would you kindly turn on your windshield wipers?
They were working perfect yesterday. I must have lost one in a car wash.
Did you see the boom mic for just a moment in the corner of the windshield? Columbo has a slightly worried look on his face as the cop approaches him with the clipboard.
Your right turn signal is out, your high beam doesn't work, and your smog device is leaking. Do you ever consider getting another car?
I got another car. My wife drives it. But that's nothing special, just transportation.
Oh, we've heard that before.
You ever thought about getting a new car?
No, you see, I already have 2 cars. Of course, my wife's car is nothing special. That's just for transportation, you understand.
Did you ever think of getting another car?
But I got another car. My wife drives it. Of course, it's nothing special, just for transportation.
New scene at Hayward's beach house. We get to have a unique experience seeing Columbo drive a huge tow truck. Shelley's Beach Service. This area is located on Broad Beach Road. I am not positive where the garage was, but it at least is one of these 3 houses. They look completely different now. Columbo drives this big truck through the little road and out onto the highway. Once he's on the highway, there is a chain link gate, a row of mailboxes, and a mountain on the left. Now, looking at the area today, there is still a chain link gate, which leads out to the beach, a row of mailboxes that looks like a bomb went off in one of them, and the mountain on the left. And we will continue to watch Columbo drive for another 30 seconds or so. During this scene, I should mention our composer for the episode, since all we hear right now is music and the truck's engine. It's our good old friend Dick de Benedictus. He's already done so many episodes that I'm not even going to list them right now. He's the main man when it comes to Columbo music. Columbo stops the truck and the stopwatch at 3 minutes and takes a look around at his surroundings, gets back in the truck, and heads back to Shelley's. This tow truck is a 1968 Chevy C40. Arriving at the gas station, we see a man admiring the tread on Columbo's tires. When he sees Columbo, he tells him the car is ready, even though he left it up on the lift. Maybe he does that regularly to keep people from driving off without paying. Columbo thanks him for loaning him the truck for a little bit and gives him a tip.
Yeah, no problem. Your bill's over here. That'll be $65.25.
That much, huh?
Wasn't the part so much as the time it took.
Well, I'll bet it did take a while, the way you were examining his tire. And $65.25 today is a little over $460. That sounds about right. It's hard to get out of the mechanics without spending at least $400. Columbo asks if he'll take a check and introduces himself.
What are you, undercover or something?
Oh, I'm underpaid.
That is a great response. Well, this is Mick Jagger's brother Shelley, played by James Richardson, born 1945 in Gainesville, Florida. He was in about every episode of Sierra and a few episodes of Emergency. Columbo, of course, can't find his checkbook.
Do you have a counter check?
Yeah, over here. Here.
Counter checks aren't really used anymore, unless maybe you live in a very, very small town. Businesses got them from the bank, and customers would fill in the information like a regular check, except they needed to know their bank account number. Columbo can't find a pen to write with, and Shelley gives him one. He asks Columbo if he is investigating the murder up on the beach.
Yeah, my luck. One night we have a little excitement, and I miss it.
What do you mean?
Wednesday night we ran out of gas. Closed at 8 o'clock.
Well, now that was some very useful information for sure. New scene with Hayward heading downstairs, surrounded by campaign people. One of them is Mickey Golden. He's been quite a regular on Columbo so far. We know him from Suitable for Framing Twice, Lady in Waiting, The Most Crucial Game, Requiem for a Falling Star, The Most Dangerous Match, and Double Shock. Along with Mickey Golden is Mike Lowley from Lady in Waiting, Short Fuse, Blueprint for Murder, Etude in Black, Requiem for a Falling Star, A Stitch in Crime, Double Shock, and Any Old Port in a Storm. Linda calls for Hayward to speak to him. She says that policeman that was at the campaign headquarters was at the dedication this afternoon.
What did he want?
Nelson, he makes me nervous.
What is she supposed to be nervous about? Does she figure Columbo is investigating their love affair?
He wanted to know why Harry Stone didn't know about your wife's surprise party. What does it mean?
I think just trying to make a name for himself, darling.
This scene is strange. Linda being nervous about Columbo doesn't make sense, and Hayward saying Columbo trying to make a name for himself by doing his job doesn't make sense. It'd be different if she was in on the murder with Nelson, but she doesn't know anything about it. Hayward tells her not to let Columbo get to her and don't be nervous, and then he leaves. Then we notice Columbo walking up the stairs with a box.
What is it you want, Lieutenant?
I'm just looking for the head security guy.
I last saw him in the kitchen.
Oh, thank you very much.
Columbo says he has a few things to discuss, but doesn't want to bother him right now because he can see he's busy.
Oh, quite to the contrary. There's no time like the present. Why don't you gentlemen go on out and wait in the patio? I'll be right there.
Columbo says he doesn't want to inconvenience him.
Well, let's understand something. You think I'm reluctant to talk to you, but you're wrong. I will talk to you as often as you want, for as long as you want, about anything you want.
Oh, fine.
Nelson suggests he go sit down. See that huge white and blue, would you call it a vase? Mr. Kennicott had the same one in Deathland's hand.
One of the things that's bothering me...
Would you like a drink? I'll fix your drink.
No, thanks very much, no.
Columbo says he really likes Hayward's jacket, and then he goes over to feel how soft the jacket is. He tells Hayward that right after he left the campaign headquarters, he ran over to his tailor's.
I'm sure he was delighted. He loves a challenge.
This is the thing that bothers me, is that it takes this guy 10 days to make a jacket.
Lieutenant, I'm going to make myself a drink. You sure I can't fix you one?
No.
Oh, well, there's another piece of decor from Deathland's hand. That Archer statue was in Mr. Bremer's office. Columbo tells Hayward that the jacket he is wearing was delivered today, which means he would have had to order it 10 days ago. But the old identical one that Harry Stone was wearing got ruined 4 days ago, when he got shot.
I just don't understand how you would know 6 days in advance that you would need a new jacket.
Hayward asks if he examined the old jacket. Columbo said, well, no, he didn't personally examine it.
Because if you had taken the trouble to examine it, you'd have found that the cuffs had begun to fray and there was a little cigarette burn in the left sleeve. That's why, 10 days ago, I ordered a new jacket.
I kind of wonder now about the statement Hayward made to Columbo earlier.
Actually, I had second thoughts about this jacket. It's identical to the one that Harry was wearing when you found it.
That kind of makes it sound like he did order it as a replacement after Harry was killed. Anyway, Hayward suggests they walk and talk. Columbo goes and gets his box, and they head outside by the pool where Nelson is going to film a campaign commercial. An odd thing happens, though. He whistles this old man. I don't believe that ever happens again, where someone else other than Columbo whistles or hums or sings this old man. Columbo says he went out to Hayward's beach house and drove 70 miles an hour for 3 minutes and then stopped to look around, and there was nothing there.
No bar, no restaurant, no gas station, not even a private house. Nothing.
What were you looking for?
A phone, sir.
A phone?
Yes, sir.
He says Stone's watch fixed the time of death at 9:20, and the killer's phone call came in at 9:23. Where did the killer call from? The closest public phone is 7 minutes away in a gas station. Hayward has the answer, of course.
Did you know that Harry Stone always set his watch 5 minutes fast so he'd never be late for an appointment?
No, sir, I didn't.
Everybody else knew that. Instead of the time of death being 9:20, that'd fix it at 9:15.
So Hayward figures he's in the clear now since the gas station is 7 minutes away.
Plenty of time to get out change, light a cigarette, and make a telephone call. Does that answer your question?
No, sir. Station ran out of gas. Closed early, 8 o'clock.
Are we having out for a voice test, please?
That man is playing the TV director for this commercial they are about to shoot, and he is played by Jack Riley, born 1935 in Cleveland, Ohio. He began his career as a radio personality before getting into acting. He was in The Long Goodbye, silent movie, To Be or Not to Be, Spaceballs, several episodes of The Bob Newhart Show, but what fills most of his acting resume is the TV show Rugrats as the voice of Stu Pickles. Not only the TV show, but all the movies and video games that came after. Hayward says, well, what about the phone in his beach house? The keys were right there with his car keys.
The call to the police came in downtown, sir, from your beach house. That's a toll call. I checked the telephone company. No record of a call.
Hayward wanders over to the director with the wheels turning in his mind for an answer to this telephone thing. Columbo greets Mrs. Hayward.
Do you have a minute?
Back here.
Yes.
How long did you know Mr. Stone?
Oh, a long time.
Columbo asks her to look at Harry's shoes, commenting on their great durability and heaviness.
Well, that was Harry. He wasn't very stylish. Yeah, if he wore it, it was durable. If it was nothing else, it was durable.
And then Columbo pulls out Harry's suit, commenting on how durable it also was.
I mean, that's their main feature. They never wear out.
Well, that's Harry, because... Shh.
The director gets mad at them for talking, and so they move a little farther away.
The brutal reality. And it's not going to stop until the...
This man is played by Robert Cole, born 1920 in Chicago, Illinois. You wouldn't know it by looking at him, but Robert was a dancer and taught dance lessons and appeared in a lot of musicals and westerns wherever dancing was involved. You'll find him dancing around in Oklahoma, Jailhouse Rock. They shoot horses, don't they? Oh, now wait a minute. Oh, we already met him during Blueprint for Murder. I never mentioned his dancing back then, though, so I know you were wondering. Alright, now that Columbo and Mrs. Hayward are away from the filming, he tells her he brought Harry's shoes and suit with him to a jewelry store to have them pick out a watch that would match the quality of these clothes.
Look at this watch. You can't break it. It's still ticking.
But I agree with you. I think Harry would buy that kind of a watch.
Hayward glances over at Columbo and his wife as he tries to film his political commercial. Columbo leaves, and now Mrs. Hayward needs to speak to Nelson, and she's a little worked up over some of the questions she was asked while we were watching Hayward get distracted by them.
Wanted to know, night of the party, if you left the room between 9:15 and 9:30. He's a homicide detective. He's not just an ordinary...
Don't let him upset you.
Wanted to know if you got along with Harry.
Then he says his favorite line of the episode.
Harry was killed driving my car in my clothes and in my garage.
Yes, and wearing my hat and my jacket, zipping out of the garage in my car.
And a man wearing my jacket and my hat, driving my car, pulls into my garage and he's shot down dead.
And then gives Mrs. Hayward a hug, saying he's going to make it all right. New scene of Hayward making one of those newspaper cutout threat letters, but take just a moment to look at this. You notice anything kind of goofy about this? Yeah, he has a newspaper there with pieces cut out, but he is taping what looks like something the prop guy typed up and printed off on a sheet of paper, and then cut out the words. Look at all that white space, suggesting there were no adjacent words around them. And then he silently crumples up the newspaper and tosses it into the fire along with his Mickey Mouse gloves.
This is Larry Burrell at the headquarters of Nelson Hayward.
Yes, this is Larry Burrell. No information can be found on when or where he was born, but we will see him in a future episode. Hayward is in his office playing with his safe. He takes out his briefcase to remove his Colt Detective Special and put it in his coat pocket. Then he almost closes his safe, but the sound guy figures he did actually close it and adds the sound. He picks up the phone to have Miss Johnson sent in.
Good morning, darling. That's for luck.
And I could use some.
He takes out of his desk drawer the super convincing death threat letter, which is actually cut and taped slightly different than the one we saw earlier, so the prop guy made 2 of these fantastically constructed letters.
Oh, no.
Easy, darling.
Before Harry was killed, there was a possibility that these were just idle threats, but not now.
No, not now, after seeing this evil craftsmanship. She asks if he told the police yet.
Oh, no. Linda, I'm scared. They're never going to believe that I didn't just plant this thing here myself. If just somebody else would have found it. The police will never believe me.
Hayward's acting here could only convince the simplest of minds.
All right, I found it.
Oh.
Ask Sergeant Vernon to come in here, please.
Well, he's the perfect one to ask in since Sergeant Grover Vernon believes anything. Now we're back at the hotel, surrounded by reporters and policemen. Sergeant Vernon Grover goes to find Columbo.
Lieutenant. Yeah. Mr. Hayward's back in his suite, sir.
This man playing poker is Ken Dumaine. We met him in line during Blueprint for Murder. The man behind him is Jack Burrell, born 1904 in New York, New York. He was an older brother of Milton Berle. From what I read, they never really got along with each other. While his brother Milton was in the spotlight, Jack stayed in the background, and he liked it there. You can find him in the background of many popular productions, some being Judgment at Nuremberg, The Manchurian Candidate, The Poseidon Adventure, The Sting, Chinatown, The Godfather Part 2, The Shootist, and The In-Laws. Well, I wouldn't mind having a Jack Burrell movie marathon, would you? Columbo tells Sergeant Grover Vernon to let him know if Hayward is ever alone.
Oh, right. Right, sir.
And Columbo tries to get a little shut-eye under the newspaper. Linda Johnson shows up with Hayward's briefcase. The policeman says he needs to take a look inside the briefcase, and Miss Lady Cop needs to take a look at her before she can enter Hayward's room. We're shown super clearly that there's nothing in the case but papers. They bring Hayward the briefcase and let him know that Miss Johnson is being searched right now.
You guys mind if I go in there and make a few private phone calls?
Sergeant does a once-over in the room to make sure no assassins are lingering on the balcony. Then the cautious and alert and aware Sergeant Grover picks up Hayward's coat, which has a gun in the pocket and is totally oblivious to the weight of his coat. That particular revolver with the suppressor weighs approximately 1.5 pounds. He casually hangs up the gun-laden coat in the closet.
All secure, sir.
I bet Hayward loves having him as one of his main men. Hayward locks the door and the phone rings in the room Columbo is in. Look at this sandwich. Why is it like that?
The candidate's in his bedroom alone. He had some personal calls to make.
Right.
Columbo keeps his eye on the phone. Now Sneaky Hayward is carrying out his next slick plan. He goes to the balcony, and it looks like the view is a big painting of the city. Pretty convincing. Hayward raises the gun and shoots through the window, closes the shades, and checks the bullet hole in the wall. Locking away his gun in the case, he hides the bullet hole with a chair and then comes back out, asking Linda to lock his briefcase in the safe. Mrs. Hayward walks in and has a look at Linda Johnson, wondering what in the world is her appointment secretary doing here?
Mrs. Hayward, will you be needing me any more this afternoon?
No, but I'm sure that Nelson will.
She's figured it out.
Lambo. We're just leaving with the candidate and his wife to vote.
Good luck, sir.
Now we're at the voting party. This man shaking Hayward's hand is played by Eddie Garrett, born 1927 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was in almost every episode of Quincy M.E. As Grover Vernon patrols the room, he walks behind Robert Board, born 1922 in Los Angeles, California. His main passion in life was being a puppeteer. He was also in several episodes of Mission Impossible. Mrs. Hayward's friend shows up.
I'm sorry about the search. I minded so much I'd have been you instead of her.
Hayward meanders towards his bedroom door and sneaks in, setting up his special scene he has planned, and takes out a little firecracker from his pocket and lights it on the balcony floor. It pops and the ladies scream and everyone runs towards the sound of what was meant to be a gunshot rather than away from the sound. They're like moths to a light bulb when they hear what must have been a gunshot. Sergeant Grover Vernon comes in with his gun drawn and freely pointing it wherever. Everyone is practically rioting in this room all of a sudden. Why are some of them fighting with each other? Grover comes back from checking the balcony with his gun waving all over the place. And it's no surprise at all that he didn't notice the remnants of firecracker on the floor. Sergeant Grover Vernon is definitely the most dangerous character in this episode.
Whoever it was, Mr. Hayward, has to have been a human fly.
Well, that explains it. Good work, Sergeant. Columbo shows up to help improve this mess of a scene.
Lieutenant, somebody just took a shot at Mr. Hayward.
Yeah, I heard. Forget about surrounding the building because the guy that fired that shot is still in this room.
He means me.
Yes, sir.
Oh, was there a gun in this room?
Sergeant Grover Vernon has one, but he can keep that in his pocket for safety reasons. Hayward goes over to the window, asking Columbo if that is a bullet hole in the glass, and if it were fired at an angle, and having missed the intended victim, that the bullet would hit the wall, causing that bullet hole. Hayward continues, swimming in his confidence, asking that if the bullet in the wall proves to be from the same gun that killed Harry Stone, then the same hand fired both shots.
Yes, sir.
Then all that remains for you is to dig the bullet out of the wall and take it to ballistics for a comparison.
No, sir.
And then the greatest thing that could have happened happens.
I've already dug the bullet out of the wall, and ballistics has already verified that it came from the same gun. Here's the bullet. No bullet in the wall. Bullet's right here. It's in my handkerchief. Yeah, there she is.
Man, Hayward, can you get your lying politician tongue to talk you out of this one? Columbo explains that when he was told he came in here to make some private phone calls earlier, he watched the phone from the room next door for room 615's light to turn on, showing that the phone was in use.
Never lit up. I didn't know what the hell you were doing here. I knew you weren't making a call.
He says when Hayward and his wife left to go vote, he took advantage of the opportunity to come in here and have a look around.
I found that bullet hole in the glass door, and that took me to the wall. I dug this bullet out of that wall 3 hours before you said that somebody fired it at you 3 minutes ago. You're under arrest, sir.
Look at him. Well, that knocked him down a few notches, didn't it? This is one of my favorite gotchas. I love how ridiculously confident Hayward was in his assassination attempt explanation, and how Columbo allows him to rattle on and finish before revealing he's had the bullet for 3 hours already, and how slowly he takes it out to show him, savoring every second. I also really like that Hayward never says another word. Jackie Cooper did a fine job portraying a crooked politician. I rate Candidate for Crime 5 Columbo cigars out of 5, one of my favorites. And I found Columbo to be extra entertaining. There are a number of scenes that were drawn out in this episode to add an extra minute here and there. The traffic stop and the mechanic scene were also added to help extend the episode to 98 minutes. And if we've been listening all along, we know why they would want to extend the episode to be extra long. Well, yes, you have been listening. The longer the episode, the more commercials can be squeezed in, resulting in more money to wipe their wallet with. Many Columbo fans actually complain about the extended scenes like the dentist, the extra long crime scene investigation in the garage, the car parking and shooting demonstration in Hayward's office, the scene at the tailor's. I read that many think these scenes were pointless and don't add to the plot. Well, they may not add to the plot, but they do add to the character of Columbo, which is extremely important to have personality in the show. Sometimes I just like watching Columbo be Columbo. Did you know the original motive for killing Harry was because Hayward was using campaign donations to try the Tony Goodland method of buying his wife in order to keep her from divorcing him?
That woman happens to be my wife, and I want to keep her. Money's what it takes. Money's what she'll have. What a waste.
But Hargrove and Kibbe switched it over to the secret little mistress remaining a secret. I can't figure out what Hayward saw in Linda Johnson, though. She was a very boring character. I thought Mrs. Hayward was an interesting character, though, and Joanne Linville did a wonderful job acting her part. The music that plays at the end when Columbo says he dug the bullet out of the wall 3 hours before Hayward says he was shot at 3 minutes ago, that tune always reminds me of Young Frankenstein. By the way, politics is probably my least favorite subject to talk about ever in the whole wide world. That topic is designed to upset and separate us, so hopefully you don't get the itch to try and discuss it with me, unless you have a good joke. I do love to laugh. Hey, Jackie Cooper was 5 feet 9 inches tall. I always kind of thought Will Ferrell looks like he could be Jackie Cooper's nephew or something. I think it's the really long upper lip and the heavy brow and the no lips. There are a couple alternate titles for this episode from other countries. Finland called it A Politician in Trouble, and West Germany called it Die for Me. If your country had a different title, I'd love to hear it. I have no problems with the title Candidate for Crime, but if you have suggestions for a different title, those are always fun to read. And some of you come up with really, really funny ones. Also, this is another episode where Columbo never lights his cigar, even though he asks for a match.
Give me a match.
Coming up next is Double Exposure.